Bring me everyone.
What do you mean, everyone?
Everyone!
All right, here we go. Welcome back once again. Today we're going to be taking a look at this knife right here. This is the Quiet Carry, the 9. While it's true that I'm not as enamored with Quiet Carry as it seems everybody else on YouTube is, I do actually like this brand and their design language. While I'm not really gaga over them, I appreciate them because they are making very well-made knives with a nice, simple, and clean aesthetic. And the 9 is no deviation from that formula. Although I was wanting one of these since I first saw the images of them last year that they posted pre-release. So my expectations were a little bit higher for this one than the other two models that I've reviewed in the past. So, how does it fare? Is it more impressive than the Drift and the IQL, or is it kind of on par with them? Well, let's talk about that very quickly. First off, I'm really liking the overall size and blade shape on this. I like the fact that it's a taller blade. It really has a tougher feel to it, even though it is pretty thin blade stock. Feels really good in the hand because the balance of the size of the blade to the size of the handle, the ratios are perfect. So I feel like I've got a good full-size grip on this knife, and I'm really enjoying the way that it feels in my hand. And I'll tell you this right now, if you don't feel like staying tuned for the entire review, I like this knife enough that I think that this is the first of all the Quiet Carries that I'm actually going to spend my own money on and buy for myself. I really do dig this. Now, if you want to find out why, that's why you want to stay tuned for the rest of the review. So the size and the shape, first off, that is a major, major win for me. I really, really enjoy this. It feels really good in the hand. Great ergonomics, very neutral ergonomics, but they still feel very, very good. I wish the jimping was a bit more substantial, but that's whatever. Now, the finishes on this particular variation, I'm not a massive fan of because while I do normally like a stonewash blade, the problem with their stonewash is it leaves fingerprints like crazy. Fingerprints and marks. And so if you're the kind of person that would much rather slow roll this with the thumb stud instead of flicking it like I do, your skin is going to come in contact with the blade all the time, and it's going to collect the oils from your skin and leave smudges all over it. Now, that's not going to affect the usability of the knife in any way. However, you know, when you've got a knife that you're really proud of, that you really love how it looks, when you pull it out of the pocket, you don't want it to be smeared up with a bunch of oils and streaks and crap all over it. You want it to look like the thing that you bought because you liked it. So that irks me just a little bit. But again, it's not a huge, huge deal. The textures that they have chosen in the micro milling on this handle make it rather unique. You don't really feel them. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you're looking for this to have a texture to it that gives you a little bit more tactility or a little bit more grip, it's not going to. It is perfectly smooth. They have stonewashed this so long that it's knocked off any high points that may have ever been in that micro milling. So while in some photography that the milling pattern may stand out a bit, you will barely notice that it's there visually when it's in your hand, and you won't notice it by touching it. It's just not going to be there. By the way, there's some of the smudginess I was talking about with the stone wash finish of their blade. I don't know, it just looks weird. It's unattractive. So there are other finish options for this knife, and I'll do my best to edit in some images or names of what the options are here on the video. This is one of their signatures. I don't know what it's about, but the 4 holes that they put in some of their designs, I don't know what it means, but it must mean something to them. Maybe there are 4 points of design that they're trying to hit, or 4 points. This means something to them internally, and I just don't know what it means. The other thing that I don't know, unfortunately, is where the name comes from. I don't know what the 9 signifies. It's kind of beyond me. Maybe if this knife were 9 inches overall, I would have understood it better, but it's only about 7.5 inches overall. So I don't really understand where the name comes from, and it's not mentioned on their website. Perhaps it is on their social media somewhere, but I have not seen any mention of it in print anywhere for me to reference. So, again, is it more impressive than the Drift and the IQL that I've reviewed before? Yes, in some ways it is. While I do miss having the completely corrosive resistant steel, or corrosion proof steel, I should say, this is still using MagnaCut. MagnaCut is highly corrosion resistant, so I don't think it's going to be an issue. Is it going to be like a cobalt alloy?
What? No.
No. That would be completely impervious, just like the titanium. But it's still going to be crazy corrosion resistant. And listen, I'm not one to be sweating all over my shit anyway. I don't go out on a boat and go fishing. I'm not doing anything on the ocean in the salt water with this. So it's not going to be in an extremely abusive environment. It's just going to be in a standard EDC roll. And I do live close to the ocean, so there is moisture in the air, and it is salt water that's in the air. So yeah, it is going to work just fine for my everyday needs. The action, I think, is another important thing to talk about. If you love thumb stud knives, you are going to love this knife. The huge scallop that you have beveled into this finger choil here gives you perfect access from the front and from the back, just like your high school girlfriend. So you're able to flick it open with your thumb. You're able to slow roll it with your thumb, although the detent is set better for that faster release. And you can also reverse flick it if your index finger isn't in the way with the thumb stud that's on the back. It's a pretty lightweight blade, even though it's a fairly large blade. It looks larger than it really is, let's put it that way. I like it more than the Drift because it's a little bit more substantial. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably time to bring out the Drift just to give you that comparison. And with that, I think it's high time that I give another big thank you to Don, who sent these out. He has allowed me to hold on to these for a while. I've had a lot of other things on my plate, and I haven't had the chance to rattle through these videos as quickly as I wanted to. So I still have his Drift right here, and I'm glad because it gives me the opportunity to show you the differences. Now, it's not an enormous difference, but you see the blade stock is a little bit thicker. You've also got, instead of these slab-sided titanium handles. You have lightly contoured titanium handles, and that means they're going to be a little bit wider, a little bit thicker at the center line of each of the panels. So while my biggest gripe about the drift, as much as I did like it, was the fact that it kind of felt a little bit, I don't want to say wimpy, but it's unsubstantial, I guess would be a good way to put it. It is a nice knife. It is a really nice knife, and the action's really great, but it doesn't feel like it's a super tough knife, even though I'm sure it is. It's obviously plenty fine for most everybody. This one just feels a little bit more, I can beat the shit out of it. And that's not a real designation, of course, but that's kind of what it feels like. The action is also a little bit nicer. The tension on the lock bar here is quite a bit stronger, so it's providing more friction of the detent up against the steel. Whereas this one, this relief cut here is doing its job. I don't think I really noticed it before, but the internal lock bar relief cut, yeah, it is keeping it pretty tight, at least in comparison to the 9. The 9 just drops right in, feels really, really good. And it is noticeable when you are closing it like a normal human being, not like a YouTuber that's doing the release and drop. Feels really, really good. Another thing that I like a bit more is the fact that it's got a milled titanium clip instead of the El Cheapo paperclip style pocket clip. And again, I will say this because if you haven't seen all of my videos, you don't know, I do commend these clips for working very, very well. You get the perfect amount of tension, and they're very easy to get into the pocket. They're great as far as their utility, but they look cheap. They feel cheap because they can move laterally and they can scratch up your frame. Not a huge fan of that. Whereas a milled clip is going to be much more substantial. It can be made in a fashion to match the design of the knife a little bit more, which they really didn't do here. It's just a plain rectangle with a rounded end. So, I mean, it kind of sort of looks like, I don't know. I think they could have put more effort into the design of the clip. That is really this company's weak point, is their clips. Even when they step up their game, they put in the effort to do a milled clip, it's just kind of, blah. You know, and I don't know what their fascination is with the super deep carry. So the way this clip is made, it drops all the way into your pocket, which means you can't just grab it quickly and easily. You kind of have to fish around inside your pocket, reach in and pinch it and pull it out. I don't want to do that. I want to access my knife quickly and easily. Give me a little bit sticking up out of the pocket, please. I am not a secret agent, and I'm not fooling anybody by hiding my knife, deep carry, ooh. No, that clip is still hanging out of your pocket there, buddy. Everybody knows what you're carrying. I've said this for well over a decade in my videos, and I will continue saying it. Deep carry clips are stupid, at least for their intended purpose. I understand that some people enjoy them because they feel that they're less likely to somehow bang up their knife because it's riding all the way into the pockets. They're not scratching it up if they're a klutz. Okay, sure.
Sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
But, whatever. I'll leave it at that. Now, here's what I like the least about the knife, and it kind of puts it meh, just like the Drift and the IQL. And again, I feel like I have to keep justifying this so people are not misreading what I'm saying. I am not dogging the knives or the brand. I like the brand and I like the knives. They're just not, wow, I've got to have one of these. Kind of knock me over, kick me in the seat of my pants at their price points. I think that there are other choices that are out there that are a little bit more, wow, got to have that at their price point. But again, I love the size and the shape and the action. I think that puts it above the Drift for me. The Drift is a bit more like a Sebenza as far as the way the opening and closing feels. Although I will say this, it's not as tight as a Sebenza. You get more of a satisfying flick out of it with less effort. But what I mean is it's meant to be a slower knife. This feels like a flipper that just happens to have thumb studs instead. It really has a nice action. You can really tell that the ceramic bearings and the ceramic detent are benefiting this knife greatly. Really, really good choices there. Again, while I like the simplicity of their design language, sometimes it is a little bit bland. Like you just wish for a little bit more. And I don't really know what that would be right now that wouldn't be over the top. All I know is when I pick up the knives, I go, yeah, I like them, but they're not singing to me. They're not pulling at me like many other designs would. So I guess it is to say it is perfectly okay. And that's what it is. Is perfectly okay acceptable for you at $335? Only you can make that determination. Let's put this right over here and let's get some specs out of the way. Overall length, 7.54 inches with a blade length of 3.28 inches. Blade thickness, 118 thousandths of an inch thick. With a frame or handle length of 4.22 inches, which would be the closed length, 4.22 inches. The company lists it as a clip point, and I thoroughly agree with that. A lot of people have been calling that a drop point, and it's kind of in between the two, but it definitely has more of a clip point feel to it overall. This particular offering is in CPM MagnaCut. They do not list the Rockwell hardness, unfortunately. Are they going maximum and getting like 64, 65 Rockwell out of it? I don't know. They're probably hitting 62 on average. That is what a lot of brands are doing with MagnaCut. But for me, and that's perfectly acceptable, but when you're paying for MagnaCut, you want that extreme degree of performance that it's capable of. Your detent and your bearings, as I've mentioned before, are ceramic. And this carbon fiber and ceramic inlay is beautifully done. You can kind of feel it a little bit, but it's still inlaid very, very well. There's no issue with it whatsoever. You just notice that there's a little bit of a difference there in the way that it's inlaid. Very plain Jane on the frame lock side. Nothing wrong with that. That, again, is pretty par for the course. I just wish more companies would put in the effort. If they're going to have an inlay on the presentation side, there is almost always room to do some inlay work on the lock side. And if not, put the inlay into your pocket clip. Do something. Give me a taste of what's on this side, like a preview. Like, I wonder what's on the presentation side. Oh, is it carbon fiber? Yes, it is. It would be nice. Put in the extra effort. It would be really, really nice if you could. As an example, let me give you a comparison. This is something that I strive to do myself in my designs. Now, I'm not going to sit here and talk about my knife, because I don't really want to make that comparison, but I do want to give the direct comparison knife to knife. My knife is a lot slimmer even. And I still wanted to have the inlay in there, and it works out well. It's the same carbon fiber that's on the other side. So it's not plain Jane and naked on the back side of the knife. It almost feels like you have two different knives when companies do that. Now, again, is it abnormal? No. Most frame locks are going to be plain Jane on the lock side. That's just the way it is. So, just wanted to put that out there that yes, it can be done, and it could have been done for this price because that is less money than that. But do I feel like I could go out into the garage right now and cut down about 50 cardboard boxes with the greatest of ease? Absolutely I do. I like how my hand grips it. I like the forward choil here in the frame. I really wish that jimping was more substantial so I felt more locked in. But everything else feels great. I feel like I've got some leverage on this, and it would be quite easy to actually work with. Very easy to slice with. Doing draw cuts, I can do a pinch grip and do a nice draw cut across the surface, or cut down, open into a cardboard box, opening up packages. I think overall, very, very useful, very comfortable. And by the way, I've only slipped it in the pocket. I haven't carried it because it's not my knife. But it carries really, really well in a standard pair of jeans. Like, you almost don't even know that you're carrying the knife. And that's exactly what we want for EDC. I mean, it only weighs 3.9 ounces. It's lightweight, but it's still got a little bit, it's not chintzy feeling. It's substantial enough to know that you've got a knife in your hand, but it's light enough that it disappears pretty much while you're carrying it. So for EDC, it's really hard to say that this wouldn't be perfect for you. All you've got to do is pick out which version you like the best, which combination, which finish, and you're off to the races.